Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I've had the winter off, I haven't been doing any makes over the course of the winter. I'm just starting up now that we're starting to get some lovely weather again today. So first build of the year, I'm going to be making a bird feeder. So it's going to be a traditional bird feeding table with a peaked roof over the top, sat on a post that you can drive into the ground. Now I've got some old pallet wood here. These are just slats that I've cut out of the pallet, and they're going to be perfect lined up side by side to make the base of the actual table there. So what I'm going to do is, these have just been roughly cut with a jigsaw, so I'm going to square these up on the miter saw. Gone through now and I've levelled off the one side there, so you can see this side is still a bit rough there. So I've got a speed square. Now if you haven't got one of these, they're really useful. It's just got a lip on one side and it's just like a set square. But you just hold that on the edge there and draw a line. Just makes it really easy so you can see where you're going, because it always stays nice and level because of the thick lip on the edge. There we are. So I've now got a line that I can go back to the miter saw and cut these with. There we are. Got to that bit there. It's nice and square now. All the edges are nice and flush. Now to hold these together, I've got some slightly rougher wood. Again, this is just pallet wood. I'm going to cut these down to size here and make a couple of cross pieces and screw through to hold that all in place. So I'm just going to trim these down to size, and we'll come back and have a look at how we're going to make the rest of the bird table. Got these two pieces now cut down to size. Now I've got these quite near the outside, which is because I'm going to have the post in the middle and I have some support frames around it to make sure it doesn't tip, so I want to give myself as much space in the centre as I can. Just got some normal screws and the impact driver, and I'm just going to fix these all in place. You want to make sure they're not pulled nice and tight together as you're doing this. Keep it square as you can. Yeah, that will hold those two. I'm just going to put some in the middle. Same on this side, make sure it's pulled nice and tight. And there we have it. That is going to be the base where the birds can sit on. And put food on there. We'll have some posts coming up, and then we'll have a nice pitched roof on the top. Before we start that, I'm just going to get some edging around it, just so that the seeds can't blow off, just so we can put things on there, so if it gets windy it's all not just going to blow off. So I'm just going to get some small bits of wood just to go around the edges with. Cut down some pieces of wood to go onto the edges here, and they have a nice height there because they don't need to be particularly high. I had some old bed slats lying around here. There's a slight bow to them, but once it's screwed in place, because they're quite short, it's not going to make any difference, so we can just fix those on. So let's see if we can get these screwed into place here. As this is fairly hard wood, I think I'm going to have to just start the first couple of screws on it, just so that we can get them going. There we are. I've just put a couple of little marks with the point of the screw and just start them going. There we are. So the screws have just started. Just makes it easier when you're holding and trying to keep things square. See, because of the curve that was in that slat there, you can see there's a slight curve there, so I'm going to put a couple of screws in just to pull that in nice and tight to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to pull out over time or anything like that. There we are, and that's the first of that on. So I'm just going to add the other 3 going around here, and then we'll come back. Now finish the base. I've got the 4 sides there, so that's going to be the base of the bird table. Now what I'm going to make next is I'm going to make the legs that are going to hold the roof in place. Now I've already cut down a few pieces of old batten. I'm trying to not recycle as much wood as I can, and a few old pieces. Now to make them strong, so that it won't blow over in the wind, there I'm going to make them L-shaped, so they're going to be pieces like this. So I've just started a couple of screws going in here, so let me just finish these driving in. And the second one. There we are. So if I get the table here, this is going to form the basis of the legs here that will hold the roof in place. Now I'm not looking to have it quite so high here, I'm going to cut that down, but I'm going to be cutting it at an angle, so I'll use the miter saw for that. So it's much easier for me to just make them at a standard size here, and then I'll figure out how high I want the roof, and then I'll cut them off at the end there. So I'm going to make 3 more of these, and we'll have a look at putting the roof together. Got the 4 legs now cut. When you're actually doing it, because you're using thin batten, it's probably worth pre-drilling the holes. Now I use these sort of turbo drive screws that normally don't need any pre-drilling, but you can see there's a little bit of a split there. Now because of the way it's going to be fixed, it won't make any difference in this case, but just if you are using thin batten, it's probably worth putting the holes in first to make sure that doesn't happen. The other thing just to think about is that when you're putting the legs on, you probably want the L's to all match. So in that case, you'll need to have them so that the screws are at the bottom. I've not put the screws at the top because this is where I'm going to be cutting off there. And you can see there's a screw hole, because I realised once I started putting them together that actually they need to be opposite pairs. So there needs to be 2 pairs like this, and you can see there we are, that's the other pair which will go at this end. So what I'm going to do now is that with these in place, I want to figure out how high I want this up, and then I can then actually mark off for the rake of the roof. So I'm going to get some bits of wood here, and we'll have a look and see how I'm going to hold those so we can see at the height of the roof. What I want to do is I want to work out how long the actual roof pieces need to be. So I've got a couple of old bits of batten here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold these 90 degrees there, place that over, and then I can see I want the roof to overhang by a few centimetres on each side. So I've got my tape measure here, and I can see from there, to give me a nice overhang, I'm going to cut these so that they're about 30 centimetres on each. So 30 centimetres, that's going to give me just a little bit of an overhang on both sides there, which will be the perfect pitch for the roof. So that's given me the measurements there. So what I'm going to do now, I actually want to use this slightly thicker batten for doing this. Now I'm going to cut this at 45 degrees here on the miter saw, so that both pieces come in nicely together. And then to finish off the ends, I'm going to cut them at 45 degrees in this way at the end, so that it gives it a nice flush finish. So I'm going to take this over to the miter saw and we'll get this cut. So I'm over here at the miter saw. Now I'm going to get this set first. I've got a nice clear scale on the top of this miter saw, so I'm going to unwind this and wind this round there nicely onto the 45 degrees and lock him off here. So initially I want to take off the minimum I can. Just make sure you always have your safety glasses on when you're doing anything like this with a miter saw. So just come as close to the edge as I can with the laser, and we can just cut that bit off. So we've got the nice square there. Now we checked out and we wanted it to be 30 centimetres. So now that I've got that corner, I can come down and I can give myself a mark on the 30 centimetre line here. Now actually what I want to do is I want to make sure it's on the back, because I'm going to be having an opposite cut that's going to be coming in like this. Now possibly the easiest way to do this is if I flip this around to this side's 45-degree mark. There we are. Just make sure the laser is nicely on the mark there. Some square. And there we have the first corner of the roof. So I'm going to have another one that comes down exactly the same, so that will be a nice flush corner. Cut the 4 roof pieces here. So if I hold that in place there, you can see that there's a nice overhang on both sides, which is exactly what I was looking for. Now if I hold up one of the legs, you can now see the sort of height we want this at. Now I don't want the roof to sit too high, so actually that is about the sort of height of where I want it to go. So I'm just going to hold that there, and I'm just going to make a little mark just on the end. You can see all I need is just a position there for the outside. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the miter saw to cut through the entire thing here, so that we can have these cut off at the same height, and then I'll just measure this, and then I can do the other 3 legs at the same height. So I've got my leg here, and you can see the mark there. Now I've left this one still set for 45 degrees, so I'm going to get that mark and I'm going to line that up on the laser, so it's going to be sat at the back. Lean there, that's now sat exactly where the laser is, and I'm going to cut through the whole thing. And there we are. So now when this comes over here and then this comes on the outside of it, that's all going to be nice and flush there, so I can fix that in. So I'm just going to cut down the other 3. I'll just get the measurement here so I can mark the other 3 up from this one, and then I'll get all 4 of them all sat like that. Obviously they need to be cut opposite, so this one and this one will be cut that way, and then these 2 will be cut that way. So you need to make sure when you're cutting the legs that you think about which direction they are. Remember when you put the screws in, so there was 2 that were designed for this end and 2 for that end, you need to make sure you get the angles in the right places. So here, now cut all 4 of these posts. So probably makes a bit more sense now that you can see it held up. So when I hold that in place there, that's going to be where the roof is going to sit. So what I'm going to do next, just to get these fixed in place, is I'm just going to put some screws through on both sides just to hold these in place here, so they sit nice and tightly into the corners. So once I've got those fixed, then we'll come back and go to the next step. Got these all now fixed in place, so they're actually quite sturdy in there. If needs be, if it still seems like it's moving, you can always put a screw coming back up through the bottom to make sure it's extra secure there. But actually in this, they're quite sturdy, it's not going anywhere, so I'm quite happy that that's not going to blow down in the wind. Now I've got these pieces here which are going to form the roof here. Now just so I can get them started, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get 1 screw and I'm just going to drive that through into the corner just to hold that in place so that I can work on it. So I'm just going to get that started here. So I'm just marking my spot and I'm just going to start driving that in with the impact driver. Once it's taken, just makes it easier. I can then hold him in place and drive that straight in. So there we are. And there we are. Got that nice and tight on there. And now, with that here, what I can do is once I've got the other one in place, I'll make sure that's nice and even, and I'll put just a screw through on each just to hold that in place. So we'll get these assembled and then we'll come back and look at how we're going to make the actual roof. Fix these in place now, so I've got the actual roof. You can see the shape of what this is going to look like now. Quite happy, it is all nice and solid as well, so even if it gets buffeted around a lot by the wind, it's not going to be any sort of problem. Now I've got a load of this thin batten left here. What I'm going to be doing now, so that I can actually fix roof slats to, is I want to actually cut some down so that it will go between these two pieces. So I'm going to have a piece here so we can screw the bottom half of the wood for the roof, and then another piece up here. And what I'm going to actually use for the roof is I'm going to use some more of the roof, some of the bed slats that I had here. So I'll have those running down in strips, but I've got 2 points where I can screw them top and bottom so that it holds it nicely in place. I'll get this wood cut down and get some screws going through the end on all of these places, so we'll do that on both sides, and then I'll start cutting some of the actual battens here for the roof. Put the beams in there, so now you can see that's going to make the foundation of the roof. So I've got a couple more of these bed slats, so I can hold those in place there. Now what I'm intending to do is I'm going to overlap them, so if you look carefully there, for the first side I will actually screw it in place so it's flush there, and then the second side I'll cut it so that it overlaps there, so there's a little bit of an overlap on the roof so it comes to a nice peak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some of these down, and for each one of these, where it goes in, I can then screw in to the battens that I've got coming along, and for the edge ones I'll make sure there's a little bit of an overlap. So that I've got it even, the best way to start this off is going to be to measure and put one into the middle first. So in order to do that, a good way to do it, this is obviously slightly bent board, is just make sure that you bring it up so that it's flush there, and then you know you've got a good edge, and you can do that, and then you can keep adding on the outsides, and then you'll make sure you've got a nice even overlap at both ends. Whereas if you start at one side, you might end up having to cut a piece in half at the other end. That's the best way to start. So I'm going to get these cut down, and I'll put a centre one in. Now in actual fact, if you're building this yourself, what may well be a good idea is that before you put the roof on, to make it easier to get at, you need to have the fixing for how you're actually going to support this. So there's going to be a pole here which is going to go into the ground, and whilst you can easily get in around, because you're going to have to screw down through into the pole, it may well be easier. However, for the sake of the video, so that I can keep this on the table, I'm going to put the roof on here. It's not a disaster. If you've got a nice spacious one like this, you can still get in with this even underneath the roof. However, just for the video, it's going to be much easier whilst I've got it sat here that I put the roof on first, otherwise it's going to be falling over once I've got a pole on the bottom of it, and we'll do the pole after I've done the roof. And there we are, that is the roof now complete. So this is all now ready to be attached onto a post. So I'm going to go and find a post we can use, find out what sort of height it needs to be, and we'll see about making an attachment point. I've got a post here that I'm going to be using for this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this here, and I'm going to put just a couple of screws through, right through into this, and then I'm going to put some bracing on to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. So the best way to do this is I'm going to just judge that by eye here, and then I'm just going to draw around. There we are. So I can see where I've actually got that there, and now I'm going to put through a couple of screw holes. I'm actually going to drill through first so that I can see where I'm putting the screws through from the other side, because I want them to come way through and deep into this post. So I'm just going to get the drill out and just, there we are, I've just marked myself a couple of points there so I can get two screws through into it. going to try and get this lined up here along with where my original sketch was. It's the first one in. There we are. That's the foot, those two in. So I'll rest that down there. You can see how it's going to look there. It still needs some bracing on there because just those two screws won't be enough, but that's at least a start on there. So let's get this laid down. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make some reinforcing pieces to come across diagonally to make sure this can't rip out here. So I'm going to get some wood and we'll get this all measured up. Right, I've got some batten here which I'm going to use for the reinforcement. All I've done so far, I've just cut that at 45 degrees because it just makes it easier for whilst I'm doing the measurement to have that angle in place already. In order to do the reinforcement, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have that so that sits nice and flush against here, and then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark that using the pencil. Only needs to be rough there so that I can see where that goes. You can see that's not a perfect line by any means, but it gives me a guideline. Now I'm going to cut that there, and then I can fix these to help brace it in this direction, and I'm going to actually move those around, so I'm going to have 4 pieces of this so it's braced in all directions. So let me cut the first one, then we'll go on to the second, and you'll get the idea of where we're going. We're trying to do some reinforcement on this. Cut 2 pieces now. So what I'm going to do to get this in place is you want to make sure that this is completely flush with here because they'll be going around in a circle. So I've got that there, so it's nice and tight up against there. Let me get the first one of these screwed in place. Make sure it's nice and flush. And then this screw is going to go right up through diagonally to make sure that this is braced nice and tight into here. Oops. A little bit tricky just to get it started. Once it's going, there we are. So that's now braced in that direction. Now I'm going to do the next one there, and they're actually going to go around in a circle all the way around, so it's braced in every direction. But I'll get it flipped over, I'll get this one screwed in, then I'll get the next 2 ones cut there. It's going to be a slightly different length because this side is recessed, whereas this is actually coming into the extra layer of wood. So I'll get this flipped over, put this on, cut the next bits on, and then we'll get this all fixed. Right, there we are, I've got these in. You can see all I've done is they've just gone round and it's just braced on all 4 corners so that it cannot move. Now this particular birdhouse, this one's going to be actually be put into a little sinkhole, so it's not very deep there, but it will keep it nice and stable. However, it's very easy to put a nice sort of T-piece base on there just to actually hold it in place. You can do effectively the same as what we've done here with just some long legs just to keep it upright. But there we are. That is the finished birdhouse. Thank you very much for watching. If you would like to like and subscribe, it would be very much appreciated. Thanks again.